is happening with uh, all its might, and I'm told that large number of exhibitors, both international as well as domestic, are part of this conclave. I'm also told that CEOs, presidents of the broadcasting, OEMs, regulators, content providers, and all the other important stakeholders are participating in this very important conclave, which happens every year. And I'm very happy that all of you are continuing the legacy. At the outset, I'd also like to thank the BES for being a very important partner in the waves that happened in Mumbai. Uh, the entire governing council of BES deserves a round of applause. It was because of the support and the commitments provided by the BES that the broadcasting vertical of waves could happen so successfully. So, friends, I'm told that the theme of this year, the expo, is transforming the media landscape through AI, create, collaborate, monetize. Yeah, it's a fact that artificial intelligence and generative AI is becoming integral to uh, uh, the progress that we are seeing everywhere. It's also going to disrupt every part of the media and entertainment segment, including the broadcasting segment. And it's important that we embrace the gains coming out of this technology and try and see that we can leverage those gains into the broadcasting vertical. At the same time, there are a few more observations that I would like to place before you for your consideration. All of you would agree that uh, the rapid technological changes which are happening in this segment would also require an equal and a concomitant effort on the R&D front. Most of your efforts are also kind of software driven, and I think that's where India's robust software talent pool that we have within our country can be of great help, because it is with we can leverage the the energy that our software segment has for producing viable products which can be used for uh, creating equipment ecosystem for the broadcasting segment. A very great example that we have before us is the success story of the smartphones, and to an extent a supportive ecosystem which can create research and production possibilities for manufacturing broadcast hardware in our country would be a very important imperative for the growth of this segment. Once again, my congratulations to BES for conducting this event on a regular basis without any support from anybody. It's all an industry led event. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's coming up next is a conversation that holds immense significance for the future of broadcasting in India. This session will spotlight a crucial dialogue on the public and private roadmap for digital radio in India, a collaborative vision that brings together the might of public policy, private innovation, and global standards. The next session will delve into the transformative potential this shift holds for indigenous innovation and exciting Make in India opportunities within the radio sector. And to chair this pivotal conversation, we are honored to welcome Mr. Prabhat, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting.
find out what is the expectation of private sector and from public sector, I mean from government, and how do we move forward if we are going digital in radio. And I'm sure we are looking forward to going digital in India. So there are many challenges in going digital in India. Technology is one. Then the positive is that we have a huge market, but diverse market. We have different culture, different uh, languages, diverse tastes. There's rural, urban, remote population to cater to. But then there are challenges, opportunities also. So let us begin by finding out challenges first. I would request Nisha to, as a practitioner, to tell us about the challenges that she's likely to face as we go digital in FM radio.
First and foremost, I would like to say that the private industry, the private FM industry, is not against digital radio. We're very much for it. But having said that, today we're talking about 440 crores of listenership. So we've got about 20 crores of listenership in private FM. We're talking about 19 crores of listenership from All India Radio. We're talking about 1 crore of listenership from community radio. So we're talking about a cumulative listenership audience of about 40 crores in this country, which is perhaps the largest in the world, but it may not have that much penetration as other countries in the UK and the US, which may have about 85% penetration, but we are less than 50%. So we do have a very long way to go. So the challenge clearly, which we see, I think, is the availability of receivers. So while we are talking about digital radio, we are also talking about where are the digital radio sets, and even if we do a Make in India space, how long is it going to take for us to reach out to those 40 crore audience? Is it a 5-year plan? Is there another way? Is there a shorter way to kind of reach out to that audience? Can we look at digital radio on mobile phones, for instance, which is a lot more easier, regardless of whether it is Android or the iPhone? So this is one part. And the other part is the cost of transition from FM to digital. Today, at a time when most of the PNLs of the private FM broadcasters are not really very good post COVID, what does it take for us to kind of invest? And is it really a very viable business option for us? These are the two main questions I think I would request my co panelists to answer because this is one of the main challenges.
I represent HD radio technology, which is the US digital radio technology. It's been operating commercially for about 20 years. We have created a huge ecosystem of over 100 million receiver devices, nearly 3,000 channels broadcasting. We've got 322 national emergency alert systems. And the US system was designed to not disrupt the FM infrastructure that was in existence in the US at the time. So the key thing was to make sure that the spectrum allocation for FM was not disrupted. So our technology builds very much on the FM frequency allocation, bringing an enhancement to FM to digital radio. What that means as well is everybody that owns an FM receiver today can still get services. So you're not going to have millions of radios going blank. You can phase in your services from a broadcaster point of view when you see the market opportunities for benefits of digital, better quality audio, multiple channels and same frequency, logos, image art, all these things. And then you can actually work to bring in digital receivers in tandem with that market. Again, because we've been doing it for 20 years, we've got the scale of technologies that are very well optimized, very implemented in silicon, very cheap, very efficient. And we believe that we can help get a solution that will work with the India market on mobile, on car, and on standalone.
I think reaching out and activating more of the listenership of India and engaging people to learn about the pleasure of listening to radio, that is one of the key drivers for digitization and something that has been proven in the world can be enabled through digitization of radio. How is that? On the one hand, a single transmission in digital gives a broadcaster multiple slots, in the case of DRM, up to 3 audio services. So, as a broadcaster today, with your very valuable and costly FM license, everybody needs to address the main audience #1 audience to make as much revenue as possible. With the capabilities of DRM, you can then consider reaching out to more audiences, people that in the past, up to now, had no home in radio. They were not properly addressed. Their taste of music and so on was not properly addressed. And that is growing the audience. #1 task. And the second task is how can we make sure that there is new revenue potential from those existing listeners and the growing number of listeners in the future through digital radio. And the key part of that is to have the right tools on the platform. I think in DRM, we've shown they are there, but then also to have the receivers as ubiquitously available as possible. Today, in India, we already have more than 7 million DRM radio sets in the cars on the road in the country, which once the decision for digitizing FM are taken, can be upgraded and will be upgraded with software only very quickly. So that's a huge base already to start your audience in the country in the digitizing the FM band. The other thing that was addressed is how important it is to have radio reception, digital radio reception on mobile phones. Maybe not so much for the phone manufacturers, network operators, but for the government and the society, focusing particularly on emergency warning functionality, reaching people's mobile phones in cases of crisis and disaster, even if the mobile networks are no longer operational and available. And that could be a trigger point to make sure that digital radio is supported. And again, DRM has a good proposition here in the way that the existing chipsets that are designed for analog FM can also work for digital DRM. The app is available on the App Store. So these two things can together very quickly reach a point where you have a very significant and relevant mass of receivers available for digital radio in India.
I think the theme of this conference is very important because it talks about collaboration. And even before you even think about one technology or the other, whether it's HD, whether it's DRM plus or DAB plus, which all have its advantages, which we can go into, it is always a combination of first FM. Secondly, digital terrestrial choice. So that can be HD, DRM, or DAB+. And then if you look at that, the adoption of HD is indeed in America and a number of other countries. And if I talk for myself with DAB, it's over 40 countries, and it's global's biggest rolled out distribution platform for digital. It doesn't say the others are bad, they're different. DAB Plus is in band 3. And talking about costs, first, before you go there, we know that there are high copyrights issues. There's lack of trusted audience measurement. There's undervalued radio advertising. There are long commercial breaks. There's an inability for broadcasters to deliver their content over the internet due to these copyrights. If you want to follow international best practices, what is happening in 40 other countries, and if you want to keep radio healthy and easy to find in the forefront of a car dashboard, it needs to have a prominent radio button. And therefore, what I always believe is that we as radio broadcasters, wherever we are, need to do exactly the same thing. And this is why scale is so hugely important. To look at other countries and to try and see with study cases to really get involved and see what can really work for you in your country. And if then there is a case for local, regional, and national to expand the coverage, you grow your audience, which is logical, which you can do either by HD, DRM, or DAB. But some have their advantages. And speaking for DAB, on band 3, it's a complete band not used currently. This means that layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, and layer 5 are available if given by Dordeshan and the government to radio, whether through Prasar Bharati or on another model. If that happens, and you also solve the other problems, so through a white paper and making them recognize that all of the partners, both government and all the departments included, the radio industry want a vibrant radio future, then you cannot just rely on internet solely. You have to have a terrestrial digital strategy as well. And band 3 has proven with business cases all over the world, and I have many, many business cases, so I don't go into depth on the technology. But the business cases prove it really helps radio thrive. Radio stations and the measurement of the audience, it goes up, and the revenue of the radio goes up. And that is something that is important for all the countries where radio is such an important place, especially in emergencies, but also to keep your cultural vibrant and keep your languages there, so we do not all become American because of tech giants want to take over the share of ear. So to me, it's not really, it's as Mr. Jaju said, you use AI to make your production better, but your distribution strategy needs to be combined with all of you, and then have a vision and roll it out.
Yeah, my name is Hermann Sensen. I'm a Nortel sales manager for Europe, and also the head of sales and marketing for Nortel's digital products, means DRM and DAB mainly. And yeah, Nortel, we are AM FM manufacturer. We're the only manufacturer here in the session. We're agnostic about the standards. Our products, yeah, we have a strong belief in digital radio. We are passionate about radio in general, but we have a strong belief in digital radio. So it doesn't really matter which standard the country will select. We are ready for everything. The good news is a little bit that we, as a manufacturer for transmitters, we try to make this as easy as possible. And there are some new developments out that show that, for example, you will get more and more software, which makes it more and more easy for you, particularly in India, to have a deployment in digital radio, which is true also for all three standards. And for us, yes, we are ready to support you on this. Yeah, I think this is for my first part for the introduction. I can show you a little bit more about the technical aspects of it if people are interested later. Which software and things you have to implement, but yeah, for my
What policy interventions, if at all, are required to bring in the digital radio system?
Obviously, I can provide ideas,
Yes.
but this is up to the broadcasters in India and the regulator in India to decide. So I think from a policy perspective, a lot can be done by the regulator and the government in the country to support the thriving and the migration of the radio industry from analog into the digital world. On the one hand, we have the transmission side, the use of frequencies, specifications for transmitter equipment, all these aspects. On the other hand, we have the whole receiver side, where the innovation and the activities in Europe and now in other Asian countries are showing that with a clear guidance to the receiver industry or even a mandate to support digital radio with certain features from a certain date on, this is how the receiver side can really pick up. And this is, in my view, not putting extra strings and strains on the receiver industry. On the other hand, the contrary, the receiver industry, the automotive industry are very happy about clear guidance, clear instructions, what the market will need, so that everybody can then, after that, benefit from this existing playing field and the receiver availability.
The FM broadcasters need a little support. One, what we've been requesting for is the TRAI recommendation. So there are clearly three big recommendations, which is the 4% revenue for FM broadcasters to be paid instead of 1/4 of the OTEF. The news and current affairs to be allowed on radio, and radio being on mobile phones. So one request from the industry body is to allow or consider implementing TRAI recommendations. The other concern we have is the copyright issues, and as Jacqueline also mentioned, the copyright issues. So while we can go on digital terrestrial radio, or for that matter on mobile phones, I think there is a concern as far as copyright/music royalty is concerned, and that is something where we need government's intervention to resolve the issue, because between the two bodies of copyright and the radio bodies will not be able to resolve the issue. And the other point I would also say is that it is a public private partnership which is required to make this happen. And it cannot be only the FM broadcasters and the platform owners, but mobile manufacturers, content creators, broadcasters. I think a consortium is required which has a representation of all people, which, as I said, includes content creators, broadcasters, mobile manufacturers, chip manufacturers, etc., and then arrive at a consensus. If you leave it, Prabhatji, to the FM broadcasters to decide which digital platform should we embrace in India, I don't think we'll reach anywhere. So we would request the government to take a call on that, whether it is DRM, DAB, or HD radio. We feel that it should be a decision which should be taken at your end, and we'll all follow suit.
But I also believe that broadcasters can drive the choice which technology to choose because there is an impact. If you look at business cases and how much marketing share, listening share of ear you can get through either DRM Plus or HD or DAB, figures will speak. So I invite you not to just let it at the government, but to look into it as broadcasters and make your own business cases. And also make sure that in those business cases, you look at the spectrum and decide how you want it to be divided over the country and over the various sorts of broadcasters that you have in the country. So that's my only addition. So don't let it just go. I have many, many examples around the world where the broadcasters were in the lead, going to the government with their white paper saying, we want it, but we want it both on internet, we want it on terrestrial, and we need lesser license fees. We need license fees for DAB without getting bankrupt. Because if you bankrupt this industry, there's no way back. And that is the worst thing that can happen to the radio industry, whatever technique you could choose.
Government has got a very important responsibility in setting up the framework, but it's about delivering good, vibrant services to consumers, the people that ultimately pay for everything. And, we actually have got the ability to monitor some listenership in cars of what's happening in India today. And there's so much FM listeners in the cars that we can actually get an indication of in terms of analytics. So it needs to be a vibrant market. It needs to be commercially viable for the broadcasters to build their businesses, to bring the services that the people want. And I think that it's important that they get the right balance to make sure that it can catalyze and grow and become more than it is today.
Ted, the only point here is that when I talk about cars, the listenership in India is not at the A plus level. It is the SEC, B, C, and D. So therefore, we also need digital radio in low-end cars
Yep.
for the
Oh,
listenership to
totally.
pick up.
I absolutely. And again, I'd like to make it clear they're not listening to HD radio in India because we don't have broadcasts on air at present. They're listening to FM. That's the point. No, this is a different technology that allows analytics and monitoring.
What incentives, if at all, was given by government, or it was purely private market driven thing?
So I think if you look at the history of the US, it really was taking a reasonably vibrant FM sector and allowing it to transition at its own pace. So it was actually meeting its own market demands. It wasn't like one day everything switched off and everything switched to a different system. So it's evolved in that way to bring the benefits of, as Alex was saying, digital radio gives you better quality audio, gives you multiple channels, gives you a better experience than you get with regular FM today. But it allowed the market to gradually slide into it rather than overnight because I'm looking at what's happened recently in Europe, where you had the big power outages in Spain and in Portugal. And, the government advice was get your FM radio with batteries. You're seeing, like in Hawaii, for instance, where there was fires last year, that the internet went down. Mobile services went down. It was FM radio with HD that was used for actual warnings and alerts. So you need to create a vibrant environment for the broadcasters to contribute fully.
But you asked for the incentives given by the government to the market to make it healthier. There is, of course, difference. If you look at France, it's different from Netherlands, it's different from Germany.
We can
But if
have
you look at
stories.
this,
We can have different stories.
yeah, so cross ownership rules, for example, the fact that one station, a company could own three frequencies, it got opener. So you could buy another station, another area. That is, for example, one thing. But the most important one is lengthening FM licenses for a lower fee than you used to pay, including DAB spectrum for free with the obligation to simulcast your FM station and add new stations and do marketing. So what you do is you have your FM installed base, which is a popular one. You use that for marketing and communication. And when listeners start using the devices, and of course you need the solution, as Nisha said in the beginning, making it mandatory, DAB+ in mobile phones and or cars will help. And then surely you can get a then you can surely grow. Within 9 years, for example, the Netherlands, after launching, turned revenue up with 33% in the total market, where the rest of internet went really high. Radio went up to 33%. In the UK, it was 39%. So if you address this thoroughly, you can have a broadcast model that is also an incentive that the government could give instead of an operator model. What is the difference? The difference is if you have a layer, you can give it, for example, to Prasar Bharati, All India Radio, or you give one layer to commercial radio, and they can choose their own operator to operate it. So I say horrible things maybe for here, but this is done throughout Europe. So you have various versions and things, and we know all these things, and we can share it with you if you like.
We discussed already that policy setting is a crucial component. This is where it starts. And the policy setting has to include the views and the requirements of all the broadcast industry stakeholders, particularly the private and the public broadcasters. Once the policy is in place and we are moving into the rollout phase, at that point, I can only encourage to really establish a platform, work together, and do the planning of stages and collect the proper commitment from all the stakeholders right from the get-go. As an example, in Germany, when we introduced digital radio initially, long ago, an older standard, at that time, it was a constant back and forth. And sometimes there were receivers, but no proper broadcast. There was no communication. Then there was broadcast, but the receivers were lacking. So it wasn't working. The rollout wasn't managed properly. Now, in the next phase, when we introduced in Germany DAB+, that was a good example of how you manage and orchestrate the migration from analog to digital radio in a successful way, where all the stakeholders get together from day one. In this case, it was supported, not led or orchestrated, but supported gently by the Ministry of Business and Economics, who invited all the stakeholders to a set of meetings. That was all. That was the framework they gave. And then the stakeholders organized themselves. That includes the broadcasters of all types, public, private, community. It included the retailers, receiver manufacturers, automotive industry, everybody involved in the success of digital radio, the rollout. And at that point, it was not just a brainstorming, it was a concrete definition of sets of steps and tasks that had to be taken. Subgroups were formed addressing all the different aspects from broadcast to content to receiver supplies and availability and communication to the audiences at the end of the day. And this is how it got successful. Now, in India today, digital radio has been rolled out mostly as a technical exercise and a very successful technical exercise, but was lacking the communication part and the receiver side of the part. And this is why I think when we think about digitizing the FM band, that's the key lesson we have to learn from looking around the world, how it was done successfully in other parts of the world, and draw our conclusions and benefit from those lessons learned.
Transmitters that are digital ready. Most of the transmitters we have are digital ready. It will not cost you a lot of money because Nisha, she mentioned the costs, and this is obviously a big topic, especially for the private broadcasters. So we technically, we think it's not expensive, so costs are not huge, especially if you have already the transmitters in place that are digital ready, okay? So I know the All India Radio, they have it already in all the specs. So this will avoid future investments and keep the investment if digital radio comes low for you. And that's the second point. In the long run, you can use, one transmitter could transmit more than one radio station. So several programs, okay? So in the long run, the cost would go down for each program, okay? And there's a last piece of good news. I had this, we get this from the United States. The figures we have is that now we are, the radio stations start to make money with digital radio by using what we call visual advertising and visual content. Because visual content, this is now a matter of fact, we have the studies from the United States, increases listenership, increases awareness of your radio station, okay? And yes, and you have hand on your advertising, okay? So this with digital radio, this will help then the radio stations, particularly the private ones, to create revenues, advertising revenues, and have hand on the advertising. Yeah, it means if you have it with Google or with Spotify, it's more difficult. But here we have all the technology in place to have a good sound and a good visual radio around it.
Herman, you have to add something about the technology, whether it has to be one across the country or there can be options like Indonesia is trying to put two technology. You are the only technology person here, so
That's the easy question for him then. Okay.
It's more a political question, I would say. So, yeah, well, if you look at the examples, every country, the other countries, they have always selected one standard at a moment in time. Okay. But it takes time. I agree with Nisha. It would be better if it was faster, I can understand that but in Europe it took also 20 years. So India, you're not alone. Huh? So we have to be a little bit patient because the time it takes. Huh? So it's a government from a technical point of view. Yeah, as mentioned before, it can be any standard. Huh? But just to come back for the radio station again, it's not a small thing that is happening, especially in the dashboard, in the audio dashboard, in the radio, in the car. Okay, if you look in the car, radio can literally disappear because you need to find in all the screens and all you need to find in all these applications you need to find radio. There's discussions going on. Jacqueline, she mentioned it already in Europe that you find radio, and if you're only on FM analog, then you don't appear at all because you just get the frequency and you don't have any visual information. It can really be a disaster for the radio station.
I'm just talking a couple of points. One thing I think which is very clear is that if we do embrace digital radio, we have to have FM as well at this point of time. It has to coexist. We're not talking about shutting down one and starting another. So that is point number one. The other thing which I think this country also needs is if we do transition to a digital radio, is a national beam, a regional beam, and a local beam, so that tomorrow if there is a national calamity or you have something like an Operation Sindoor, there needs to be a certain addressal to the entire country. I'm saying the national beam or the national radio, which has an all India coverage, is something which will be very, very critical. And the local stations can also contribute in terms of upholding the culture and the local news, etc. But I think a three-tier approach of national, regional, and local may be desired in the long run.
If I may add, this is why you as broadcasters should be in the lead on which technology you choose, so you can do the spectrums planning and interfere with that. So not afterwards you find that, oh, gee, we only have national and we don't have any local spectrum, because you need to address the spectrum planning very thoroughly. And we can always help with that, but you can do it in your country yourself, and it's of utmost importance.
Today in India, we see that All India Radio already considered the national part back then with the shortwave transmission, almost covering the full country, and the regional part with medium wave. And now the next step would be to add the local services in the FM band. That's a logical conclusion. In other countries like China at the moment, we see that they are adopting DRM for exactly that purpose as a national backbone service when traveling between cities on shortwave. So the whole country being covered domestically with digital radio in FM quality. That's a new thing. They're working on that. We mentioned earlier, or we heard about Indonesia. Indeed, Indonesia is looking at introducing two digital radio standards simultaneously. That is DRM for the medium wave band, FM band, and band 3, and then DAB for the upper half of band 3. There used to be already DAB services, so that's fine. It makes sense for them. And now they've added DRM for all the different bands on top of that. These two standards are special in the case of Indonesia because they fit together nicely. They have a common service layer with the same data application, same user behavior, same experience of radio. And there is only, for the manufacturers, a single set of IP royalties, and then they're done.
Time to round up now. Thank you all for your valuable inputs. I'll just wrap it up. Thank you for all the broadcasters. Those they had their AGM today and they have decided to go ahead with the digital thing also. So that's a big, great news that they're all willing to go ahead. And from government side, we have to look for the technology and the spectrum allocation. And we have to create a platform or nudge all the stakeholders to roll out a roadmap and to stick to it, how to migrate from analog to digital broadcast, and of course during the transition coexistence of both the technologies. And we'll see. Try is already seized with the matter. It is going to give recommendation on this rollout and whatever decision is taken. But thank you very much for your valuable insights on your experience from other countries and from local experience. So we look forward to a challenging time ahead. But at the same time, I am sure it is an opportunity for broadcasters and technology providers, both of them. So all the best. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, coming up next, we have an extremely relevant and future forward discussion titled The Economics of Broadcasting in the Digital Era. In a time when digital disruption is rewriting the playbook of every industry, the broadcasting stands at a critical inflection point. From revenue diversification to content monetization, and from advertising dynamics to the rise of streaming platforms, this session will deep dive into how traditional TV and radio broadcasters are navigating this digital tide. Ladies and gentlemen, for this session, we are joined by a powerhouse panel of experts.
And thanks to the fellow panelists for joining. So we'll get started on this very pertinent subject on the economics of broadcasting. I think what we have seen with broadcasting in the last few years is how, with every new wave of technology, starting with the internet, digital platforms, mobile phones, apps, and then now, of course, with artificial intelligence, we have seen the entire economics of broadcasting shifting, changing, transforming in a big way. Very glad to have a distinguished panel. My fellow broadcasting CEO, colleague on many boards, Avinash Pandey is here. We have Mr. Sudhir Chaudhary, who is coding the biggest disruption, I would say, in broadcasting right now, which is going to change the economics. We'll ask him to decode it for all of us. We have Archana ji, who has been the pioneer in the civil society movement around broadcasting, especially with community radio. I think that's a very important social perspective. I think we will want from her. She was just kidding that, usually you have all male panels and we have a token woman, but that's not the case. I think you bring a very important perspective. So please, much more than a token presence. And then lastly, we have Vivan, who is joining us from Cone, who is looking at a wide range of policy issues related to technology, broadcasting, other sectors. But more importantly, Vivan, you're the youngest on this panel, so I would also want the perspective from a consumer, how you are seeing the economics of broadcasting. So let's start with Avinash ji, because he's seen all this at various levels over the last many years. And of course, now since he's not actively heading a broadcasting organization, I'm going to ask him to be brutally frank and speak his mind.
Well, the problem of asking me to speak is to invite trouble. So let me just do that. Uh, See, the problem of monetization in broadcast business was coming our way for long, and we were just putting our head in the sand. We did not see what is going to hit us so badly. Consumer choices were changing. At the end of the day, an advertiser is coming to any television channel for the audience. If the audience is moving away, why the advertiser will chase you? And why it is going away is that you are not investing in the brand. You are not making compelling content. If you are chasing events of the day in the news channels, and particularly I ran the news business for longest, if you're chasing just the events of the day without your commentary, without your perspective, uh, how are you going to ask audience to stay with you? And that is where the problem began. Instead of investing in the brand, we started investing in OB vans, sending our TVU and live view to different locations. We started priding ourselves we are the first to break the news, while logically the news was breaking first on the Twitter, right? So the breaking news format was dead for a long time. We did not. We kept our. We were blindsided. So we were willfully blind towards the changes happening in the society. That no more audience is looking for breaking news on television. Which we kept doing it instead of investing in good programming, like what Sudhir ran for the longest, DNA and black and white. Those kind of programming worked irrespective of the platform that you are in. So now if I have to sit back on the broadcaster sit as to what to do, boss, you have to stop doing the breaking news. You are no more the authority on the breaking news. People are breaking news because everybody is a broadcaster today with your mobile phone, right? And everybody is a publisher because you can write it, right? And look at the influential marketing today. Brands are going to the influencer for marketing their product. So once, if you want to run a broadcast business today, and it can be successful, I was just telling my colleagues just now that look at the Fox News model in America. I, I, I whether you agree with their viewpoint or not, that's a different matter. But they are serving an audience which is looking for that kind of content day in day out. And if you do that, you identify your audience. If you do that, I think there is a money here, because the fun of television even today is that it's live and it's local. No other medium can replace that. But if you are just doing the lip service, chasing with your TVU and Obi-Wan events of the day, where already the politician has said what he has to say on his Facebook account or Twitter account, what are you going to question you are going to ask to him?
Very interesting question. So, Avinash obviously has been at the commercial end of the spectrum of broadcasting. Archana you are at the correct, the polar opposite end of that spectrum, representing the community radio movement. How do you make the economics of community radio work where there is no clear, obvious commercial model?
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. And it's an honor to sit next to Sir and be speaking here, because I've always heard him speaking from the other side of the stage. Uh, you know, my whole perspective of the economics of broadcasting during the digital era is very different, because I look at this digital revolution as a total disruption. And I also look at it that when we assume that, digital first or a digital revolution, we assume that everybody has access. And I think that is where there is a huge problem. We forget about the millions of people residing in rural India who do not have access to internet, who do not have access to a smartphone, who do not have the resources. This sir raised some very important points. He said Twitter. When we talk about Twitter, you said two things which were very interesting actually, and I will, sir, if you give me some time, build on those. One, you said news comes on Twitter first, and secondly, you said local. The authenticity lies with the local information and local news. So these are contradictions according to me. If you look at Twitter, you have no control. You don't know what is true, what is false. It is a continuous flow of information without verification. But when I look at the sector I come from, which is a community radio, which is local, which is embedded in the society that they are catering to, one thing is for sure is accountability. And with all the big tech companies kind of, withdrawing from this important thing of verifying content or fact checking, which Facebook has done, Twitter has done, everybody has done, then where does the common person go for the truth? So I think that, whenever we talk about a digital era, we need to look at those who are without access, and we need to ask whether we are deepening the divide or we are becoming more inclusive. That is one point. I don't know, because time is short.
Come back.
I'll come back. So for me, this digital era can lead to the dividends of digital era could lead to a democracy deficit. And I will stop here and I can elaborate on it later. Thank you.
You asked an interesting question. Where does the common man go for the truth? I know one man to whom a lot of people are going for the truth. But before we get into the topic of economics, Sudhir, I have a question for you. Your shows are in Hindi, all your audience is in Hindi, but the shows' names are always in English. Why?
So, thank you so much for having me here. I think uh, my shows are known to simplify things. And you must have seen that, even in the Hindi speaking markets, people have started using English words. And the words like DNA, words like black and white, words like decode, they are very commonly spoken words. So that's why I wanted to make it a hybrid kind of show where the Hindi speaking people and the English speaking people also should be very comfortable while watching this, and they should not even realize what are they watching, whether it's a purely Hindi show or it's a English show. So there are a lot of viewers which are on the borderline. So they like 50% Hindi, 50% English, and a hybrid viewers, what we call. So that was the whole idea, that the title of the show should be such, where you can get both Hindi and English viewers.
So, just to build on that, I know many of you may have seen this report that is published by the Reuters Institute of Journalism, Oxford University, every year for the last 4 years. And Doordarshan News and All India Radio News have been ranked highest in India in terms of trust. You come from the private sector. You've taken a bold leap of faith in the public sector and what is clearly looking to be a disruptive movement. So, what are you seeing in terms of the economics of broadcasting with your own experience of the last 1 month, your first month?
Absolutely. So a lot of people were surprised when I switched from a private channel to the government channel. So I would say that things have really changed now. And since we are talking about the digital era, I believe the game is no longer about being the largest or the biggest channel. The game is all about being the most relevant platform. So I came from a channel which claims that we are the largest channel, and I came to a channel which has very comparatively very low viewership. So I'll just give you the numbers about my show, and that will actually decode everything what we are discussing. So if you compare Aaj Tak and Doordarshan, DD News has 6 million subscribers on their YouTube channel. When I joined, it was 5 million. Now it's 6 million within a month. Aaj Tak has 75 million almost subscribers on YouTube. And since the time I have started Decode, we have already achieved 300 million views on digital. So, what does it say? On such a small platform, which is very high on credibility, which is very high on recall value, but very low on viewership, you can still get good numbers. If you uh, talk about the marketing, there was literally no marketing about the show. And this time we thought that we'll not take any hoardings, we'll not take any newspaper ads, we'll not go for any TV ads. The entire marketing of the show was done only and only on digital and on DD platforms, where we just ran few promos, and I posted few promos and the information about the show on my own social media platforms. And people, I think on the very third day, we had almost 60,000 live concurrent viewers watching us on YouTube. And on a YouTube channel which has only 6 million subscribers, we have reached as high as 85,000 live concurrent views. And as I said, 300 million views since the time we have launched it. So it says that technology is changing, consumer behavior is changing, and the market dynamics are also now changing. So I feel it's a very good case study where we can support this cause that, if you have good content, the platform does not matter. And broadcasting is not dying, but I would say it's evolving. And from one to many, it's coming back from many to one.
Very interesting experience, especially with your first month, which I know, despite the fact that you were not on air when the biggest news story happened, still these staggering numbers, I think, speak to a big change, big transformation. Vivan, will come to you. I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you own a TV? Do you watch TV news? Have you watched Sudhir?
Yes, of course. How can we?
So how does
Even if
your
you don't
generation,
watch
which
it,
is
you see it. Yes.
your generation is very savvy with mobile phones, social media, Instagram, and so on. What is your perception of broadcasting and television? What relevance does it have to young people of India, especially people your peer generation, people who are younger than you?
No, I think the consensus globally is something that is converging on the live experience being um, the hallmark of broadcast television now for whatever amount of time this medium is um, can be considered exclusive from internet and from triple play and so on and so forth. But since you asked the question, what are these generational shifts looking like? And I think Sudhir ji alluded to this also. The other day I was in my park uh, going for a morning walk where Miss Kapoor's husband is also very regular in Panchil Park. Um, there were about there were two benches that I saw in the morning. This is school hours, but these school children were obviously bunking, and five children on one bench and five children on another bench, and they were very immersed in their mobile phones. So I was wondering what they're doing. I thought maybe they're WhatsApping each other, something interesting. They're really immersed. And all of them were playing esports or watching esports. Some were playing, others were watching. And so this line between participation and passive viewership is something that has blurred quite considerably, will continue to blur. Advertisers will struggle to catch this market as it evolves because you'll have to evolve technology as quickly as the medium itself evolves, which in some instances, in the case of India overall, I think that is a big challenge for the media industry. How do you think about advertising innovation, given that we have fixated ourselves on this notion that we are a mass market, a market that will be driven by free content more so than subscriber led content, which is, of course, a hypothesis that should also be challenged in the next wave of broadcast and next generation of broadcast technologies. But as far as the free notion is concerned, the way in which some of the larger technology companies have been able to innovate around the world, we're still miles away from that in our own advertising innovation landscape. And even as we are miles away, we are seeing some regulatory contestations that may actually put us back by another few years. For instance, there is this digital competition bill, sir, which implicates advertising within it. It says that any digital business that is also doing advertising will be subject to the disciplines of that bill if it ever becomes law, which include disciplines such as no tying and bundling of services, which means essentially that if you're a publisher, you have crossed a certain threshold of revenue that qualifies you for the disciplines of that law, you will not be able to also offer an advertising service on your publishing platform, which is hugely problematic because ultimately you want to own the monetization as well, right? I mean, that is the whole point. Media goes through cycles of bundling and unbundling and bundling and unbundling, and the lesser the state intervention is in those cycles, the more organically these cycles can play out. We have seen in our case in India, the state getting intimately involved in these bundling and unbundling cycles. For what reason is wholly unclear 2 decades onwards from TRAI's first forays into this price regulatory fray of a non essential service. I mean, maybe some can argue that television is essential for certain information, education, content, etc. Yes, for which we have Prasar Bharati as a service, which is freely accessible. You've done a tremendous job with Free Dish and so on and so forth. There's no reason why that should have ever extended on to private enterprise. And what has happened net net as a result of that economic regulation of private enterprise, sir, is for all to see, that we don't have effectively a subscriber driven market where the mere presence or prevalence of niche channels is impossible. We did have, for instance, our efforts like Epic TV, if you remember, where these tales were told of our famous epics, and they did a decent job. But these kind of channels on science and technology, which, sir, my generation would really benefit from. I mean, we are, if India is not directionally headed towards science and technology as a mainstay of its policy, then it's difficult to say how we will forge through the next decades, right? So, but even a mainstream private sector run channel on science and technology, which tells me how Indians are innovating, what is happening around the country, is absent. And this is for lack of being able to find that subscription market. And I'm sure the 30 million people who pay for fixed broadband in the country, sir, who you can consider as the creamy layer of this market. Now we are at a certain critical threshold where these people can sustain businesses that are in the premium category. But that category was never unbundled, so to say, from the kind of regulatory impetus we've had.
You raised some very interesting points, and I think the point on science and technology I deeply appreciate, because I'm chairing the committee on science and technology communication, so it's a topic fairly dear to me. That's where I'll bring in Archana ji, because community radio, I think, is perhaps doing a great service in terms of taking science and technology content to the masses. So, what challenges are you facing from an economic standpoint to do those kinds of projects?
So I'll come back to the digital era. And I can only say one thing, that community radio isn't monetizing attention, it is maximizing access, especially for those who do not have digital access. That's one point. And the other thing is that whenever I can say for sure that the digital push doesn't favor the poor, because they get left out and the digital divide is just getting deeper and deeper. Everybody is talking about monetizing content, everybody is talking about numbers. But if we get into the number game or we get into monetizing content, then we don't stand a chance. But if you look at useful content, what benefits people, what saves lives, what gives them an alert on disaster immediately because it is local, what gives them weather alerts, what gives them information on science, technology, farming, anything which is related to the local context. What is the soil? What is best? What experiments have failed? When you look at a larger picture of the digital world, you will not find our footprint. But when you look at it very locally, and if you keep the monetary aspect out of it, and if you only look at access, then I think that there is no better way than still analog, still a radio, still a cheap medium, which you can access in 300, 400, 500 rupees. You can still listen to your radio on a feature phone, which many millions of people have feature phones. You know, I have attended so many conferences, sir, and to this panel, where everybody presumes that everyone has a smartphone. The minimum cost of a smartphone is 6,000 rupees minimum, plus your data 150, no matter what service provider you go to, 150, 200. Even if the family has one smartphone, there are 5 7 members in the family. If it is the man, he goes away. Why are some of our programs not succeeding? Why is a PMJY not making the right impact? Why is the Abha card not Abha ID not happening? Because the person who has the phone goes away. So when we talk about smartphones and we talk about digital technologies and we talk about digital India and whatever we are looking at, we are not actually realistic, and we have lost touch with the reality on the ground.
So, Sudhir, I think very hard-hitting words here. You have a very unique challenge, right? At the public broadcaster, you come from the private sector. You're constrained by all the norms of public broadcasting. At the same time, you need to show impact, and then you have all these obligations. How are you going about it? Give us your 30 days experience in terms of content and how that is impacting the economics.
Absolutely. So it was a new world to me when I came here. But when you work with a broadcaster like Prasar Bharati, you have to go back to the basics, what we were told and taught in our journalism schools and colleges. So one thing is, if you have must have noticed my own show also, there is hardly any masala news. There's no masala news. Uh, we are not broadcasting anything unless it is confirmed. I mean, no attacking Karachi and taking over Islamabad, what the competitors were doing. So when you people have this misconception that if you don't do it, if you don't capture Karachi, if you don't capture Islamabad, when India and Pakistan are fighting with each other, when you don't do constant programming on, say, a wife killing her husband, you will not get numbers. People will not watch you. So the whole idea was to, whether it's DNA, black and white, or decode, to make it a family viewing, to make it a family news show, which we have been we have been very successful in doing it. So I believe one change is that the nature of the show has changed compared to the other private broadcasters. Second is now to move from linear to digital. So when we are in our newsroom meetings and when we discuss stories, there was a time, I still remember, when the your journalism intuitions used to play a very major role. We used to have intuition about a story, that okay, I think this story will do well. But now that intuition is going down and the audience data is taking over. But I feel the right combination is the hybrid between the intuition of a journalist and the data audience numbers. So when we start our meeting these days, we go by the intuition also, but at the same time, we also try that whether these intuitions are being backed up by the data numbers or not. What is YouTube saying? What is Instagram saying? What is algorithm saying? So I think it's a hybrid combination of a traditional news meeting where journalists will come with their intuitions, and you will also look at the data and the numbers. And take for example, Instagram is a very young medium where we believe that only young people are there and it's all about videos. Now, Doordarshan has only 4 lakh followers on its Instagram account. And we thought that, we'll not be able to do well there. But when I started putting 1 minuters from my show on that platform, the same platform, we are getting views like 4 million, 4.5 million. There are so many videos which are like 2 million plus views. So it's a new world for us. And we believe that, we are no more dependent on platforms. Where you create good content, you have to be relevant. You have to be very friendly with your viewers, and you have to understand the pulse of your viewers. And I believe that you can still make very good, clean content. You can actually uh, give your viewers the most trusted news and still get numbers, still get successful. So I think that's the whole formula, which 99% people are not following. People still think that news is a male phenomena. News is being watched only by the males of the society, males in the family, the women in the family, the children, youth. They are not watching news. So we have to basically, get a formula where we can connect the entire family with us. There was a time when news used to be like a fine dining experience, that you will reserve your table and you'll go in the evening and you'll have your food with your family. News has become a coffee shop now. It's a snacking exercise. So you go to a coffee shop without any appointment and you pick up whatever you are liking. But it should be a healthy coffee shop. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think that's a very interesting metaphor. I've not come across this before. So thanks for sharing that. So Avinash, I'll come to you. There's been talk about the regulatory aspects and what has been happening with the industry.
Mhm.
Take us a zoom out a little, give the macro picture in terms of how the regulatory landscape has changed, how it has impacted economics, and what do you think needs to happen? What if changes, if any, that in your
So, Sashi, we have worked in IBF together. So, this industry is highly over-regulated industry for no reason. You know, I mean, it's not a fertilizer subsidy that the government should be looking at each time that what price you are selling your channel at, whom you are distributing to, what kind of content you are making, to XYZ. I mean, there are so many rules that one has to follow for a single day broadcast. On the other hand, I open a YouTube channel in a garage in Noida and I have to follow no regulation. Now, in a connected TV format, when you are competing with eyeballs, and when there is a very simple logic of psychology that when everything is available to everyone, chances are you'll move to what is best. And the definition of best, as we rightly pointed out, that each audience for definition of best is very different, right? So when you are competing in such an environment, there are light touch regulation is extremely important for this industry. As Vivan rightly pointed out, there is no reason for TRAI to get into the bundling pricing at what price. It's not, we are not selling soaps and detergent in a scarcity area or a dalda. You know, there was a time when dalda was regulated by government of India for pricing. I mean, we are not in that age. There are over 700 channels. There is enough available for everyone. Let the broadcaster decide what the market is ready to pay, and let the sharing happen between the DPOs and this thing. Second, as far as the free TV is concerned, see why the government decided to regulate, saying that look, 0.5 paisa you can give, but marketing fee you decide on your own. So every deal is now marketing fee. Now there is no capacity constraint in any DPO business today. There is no capacity constraint. But yet, if you look at the business economics of any news channel or any entertainment channel today, the biggest cost item sitting in a balance sheet is your carriage fees. That too, when there are huge amount of cord cutting is happening. So I think the government should stay out of it. The second one is that uh, the the intervention which is required from the government is the monopoly of the big tech. Okay, where they are owning both the demand side and supply side, and thus constraining your advertising revenue. For hundreds of years, media business worked in a very designed fashion. There was a wall gate. Okay, you produced your content, your hawker picked up the newspaper, it delivered to your doorsteps, collected the money, gave it to the newspaper owners, and you went out in the market and sold ads. Same thing for television. You uplinked the signal, your distributor downloaded it, he paid you the money back for distributing it, and you went to the advertiser and sold it. In digital medium, both of it has gone out of your control. You are only producing content, you are dependent on them whom it will go, and you are dependent on them whom they will sell it. Now, the government intervention is required to have a fair share of revenue coming out of these big technology. And the last one is that look, if at all the conducive environment that the government can create is that the what Vivan pointed out, that if you cross a certain level, you cannot be selling your own ads and etc. I think the monopoly which is slowly getting formed within India also of aggregators, they have to control, because otherwise the individual content creator, their creativity will die, and it will become the victim of the data point and data and all that. I'll give you an example, one last example I'll tell you from my own experience. In Malaysia, I went for a conference, and a lady came, an American lady, who was launching a food channel there. Okay. And AC Nielsen research told her that the food channel, this is the worst place to launch a food channel. You should launch in London. And but she was convinced, saying that no, I have seen Malaysian eating all kind of food, and the food channel can do well. Okay, this was 10 years ago. She launched that channel, and it became the number one channel in Malaysia. Okay. So data is not the only point. What intuitions, what we are seeing as an experience plus data has to combine somewhere together to make policy decisions. The policy decision cannot be made by the big tech or the big players alone.
So just on that point of big tech and what's happening with intuition and so on, I think a very interesting phrase that we heard is airtime has been replaced by the algorithm, right? So look ahead in terms of what is going to unfold with, especially with artificial intelligence, which is also a theme of this conference. How is the economics going to change? What impact will AI have? We're already seeing some impact in terms of content monetization and so on.
See, that's a fantastic question. See, AI, frankly, AI needs certain degree of regulation. But AI is a wonderful tool today for content curators. Okay. So the way a newsroom can become efficient and you can reduce a lot of cost is that the AI can fast curate all the newswire news that is coming on them, where you don't need much of curation. So the newsroom should move the entire staff out of that and let the AI do the job of curation of daily news. And rather, that staff should start doing something which is far more premium, a content like what Sudhir produces. Okay. And these two combinations are going to work in future. And what what any content creator or broadcaster should do today, that you not only like what he is mentioning, X amount of people are watching on live TV, but there are multiple X watching later on. There is so much video on demand viewing right now happening in India. And slight disagreement with you, ma'am. I am from Bihar, and Bihar has skipped television. From print, they directly move to mobile. Okay. And if you go to small villages also, they are on the Facebook, they are watching it. We have seen videos where people are plowing their field and watching TV on their mobile. So that revolution has already happened. What we need to do, broadcaster need to do, is to put that content on digital and sell the package together to the advertiser. That will happen only when there is also a certain regulation on how big tech are going to intervene in distribution of those content. Because if they are not getting the fair share of revenue, you will never discover that content on their platforms.
So, Sudhir, you spoke about fine dining and cafe. I think he's talking about Bihar, where probably it is the corner chai
So
shop.
I think I'll add just one more point. I think the problem lies that we are not investing enough, one, in content, and second, in research. And here I'm talking about only about the news industry. Most of the news is being generated from Freaka content. We are only covering the events, and I believe 99% of the content does not qualify to be put behind a paywall. Nobody will, and we very often complain that it's a free market. People are not paying us for news. People will never pay us for this kind of news unless you have certain kind of IPs. You must have seen there are no IPs in news. If you go to entertainment, if you go to sports, any other genre, you will find a lot of IPs. Every channel has their own IPs because they are investing in their content. They are thinking constantly about the content. There is a lot of innovation in their content. And secondly, in news also, there's hardly any research. So I believe that the main point here is that we need to invest more in content. We need to invest more in research so that you can then sell it to the market, sell it to the advertiser. TRP, I have never been a fan of TRP, and I have always believed that TRP is just, it's like an intuition. The way our what do you call, election surveys and exit polls, at times they are totally off mark. So TRPs and the BARC data is exactly like a exit poll, which might be right, might be wrong also. So digital numbers are still, I feel, to a certain extent, they are organic. But yes, big tech companies are taking over now, and I believe they are like East India Company trying to enter India, and they will dominate what we'll see. And today, even good content creators are also totally dependent on big tech companies, which is also not a good situation.
Are you seeing AI impacting your work in any way?
So, AI is saving time. You must know how to prompt AI, and you should know how to use AI. For example, I have to read 5 books. I'm doing some research on emergency, and I need to read 5 books. It's impossible for anyone to read 5 books and to draw the right references, but AI can do it in 5 minutes. So that's how we are using AI generated voiceovers. We are now using AI generated videos. We are using AI to pick up the right combination and the right stories,
And live graphics.
and live graphics. So these are all time saving things, cost saving things, but at the same time you need somebody to supervise what AI is uh, giving you.
So, Vivan, you've been looking at AI quite closely, working with whole cross section of the industry. Give us a perspective on how do you see AI impacting the media broadcast economics going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I this is a million, billion, $100 billion question. But what I can say is, if you look at the last 50, 60 years of media, the most expensive thing to do would tend to be the most profitable thing to do if you looked at long term returns. So the most expensive thing to do initially was to get into distribution and own the pipes. So you had cable cowboys in the US, you had our cable revolution in the 90s, and then suddenly you had 3,000 DPOs owning the pipes, and then that industry began to consolidate and commodify, and that period of time drew to a close. As that happened, there was also a wave of people who were able to had the bandwidth, had the deep pockets to invest into content, and the deepest pockets got the sports content, but there were other deep pockets required for theatricals and all these sequels and prequels and all of that that we have consumed over the last 10 or 20 years. So that was the most expensive thing in media, and it was also the most profitable in some sense. But that era is also coming to a close now, sir, where with AI, the you are not competing with Disney is not competing with a Fox and studios and so on and so forth. I mean, not the two anyway are not competing, but you know what I'm trying to imply is that studios are no longer competing for attention with each other. They're competing with creators who have truly democratized content creation using AI now. And if you see the leading trends in other countries, I mean, we are already starting to see it in India, but not in as immersive a fashion as in countries like South Korea and Japan. You have basically now the most expensive thing or the most time consuming thing to do is to create communities that are engaging with each other. Now, the question is who is going to invest in creation of those communities, whether those people are playing sports that they love, they're speaking the lingo that they like, they are watching the biases that reinforce them, whatever it may be. The point is that AI has led to a point where content is not going to be the most expensive thing to create. It's the communities that are going to be super expensive. So you may need to think again about to the point on intellectual property. Of course, you need to think about IPs that you can create around these engagements. You'll also need to think of authenticity with an intrinsic value. How do you bring that value outside of saying there should be editorial oversight? What are the ways in which you can premiumize authenticity, which everyone will struggle with across the world as AI becomes ubiquitous and disintermediates human beings and so on and so forth. So I see, just like in the case of brands that are physical, sir, for media also the challenge is basically being able to penetrate through to the new demographics who only care about their community engagement, and everything else is commodified. So if you're okay being a commodity and getting a rate of return that a commodity deserves, then fine, then you can play that game. But if you're looking at profitability, supernormal or otherwise, you will have to play the community engagement game.
So, Archana ji, I think starting with you, if you could wrap it up in terms of closing thoughts, we'll just go around. And also give your perspective on AI as well, because AI and community radio, how are you seeing that getting impacted?
I would just want सबसे पहले to Avinash ji, the total population of Bihar is 128.855 million. I just checked. And the total internet users are 43.88. And they may all not be in Bihar. They may be registered there, but they may be elsewhere. So this is what I have been saying. This presumption that everyone is an internet user is the beginning of the digital divide, which we really need to look at from the perspective of policymakers, from the perspective of content creators, from the perspective of platform providers. So, having said that, what I want to say, Sudhirji talked about algorithms. Everybody is talking about it. Algorithms, if we start trusting them, they are the first source of information blackout. Because if I watch Sudhirji 5 times, every time I go on, I will get a Sudhirji. So that is not what I'm looking for all the time. But the algorithm will decide what I should view and what I shouldn't view. And I have no control over it. This is the digital world that is controlling it. And as he said, that is where we need the regulation. Because what we see, we have no control about. If I like a pink sari, every time I go on, whether I'm Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, anything, I will get an ad of a pink sari. So that is my point on that. The third thing that, you know, I'm sorry, I'm not the moderator, but I want to come back to you with a question. From a very private, hyper channel, now you are on a moderate national channel. You talk about TRPs, you talk about the increase in, the viewership and everything. The same thing Islamabad gaya, Karachi gaya, Gir gaya was happening even on your channels. How difficult is it and how do you measure your viewership? Because you must be getting zillions of viewers when you were in the today you are content with 60,000 and 85,000 viewers. So, if you look at it, and I totally agree with what everybody is saying, that content, people want, we are hungry for that kind of desire. We are hungry for anger. When even the war de escalated, people were very upset. So, all of you are talking about content, but what is our responsibility? Have we looked at ourselves as responsible journalists, as responsible communicators, as responsible to our audience? Because we are just catering उनको चाहिए, and we've heard this in films. If they want अश्लील गाने, हम उनको अश्लील गाने देते हैं. If they want to see nude women, we give them nude women. But is that a responsible broadcaster? Lastly, sir, I would like to end here. Is that, I want to emphasize that whether we are using AI or authenticity, AI is reading what we want. And even when they're giving you various publications, they're culling out what you want. So we have to be very careful. I tell AI, and I use a lot of chat GPT, write like Archana. And it gives me my language because there's plenty I have written and it gives me what I want. And it's very easy for me to make an email and send it to Sunilji. It's like that. Lastly, I totally am with everybody, accessible, affordable, local, and not only monetization of content is very important. And that is the sector I belong to. Thank you.
Sudhirji, you can
No,
respond to her and give your closing
yes, yes.
remarks.
I'll just respond very quickly. I totally agree that, there are some professions which are, yes, they are business, but they also have a bit of responsibility. Take, for example, education. When you start your schools, it's not just a business, you have a responsibility. Hospitals, you are a doctor. Yes, you have every right to earn money, but at the same time, you also have to uh, be credible and serve the country or serve the society, and there has to be some kind of trust between a patient and the doctor. Similarly, news is also a business, but at the same time you need to be very credible and you need to be very, very mindful that whatever you are saying just to earn some money and some clicks and some viewership, you have to calculate the impact of that broadcast on the society, on the families, and on your viewers. If you look at me, I have always been a disruptor. When I was with Z, I started this show called DNA, which people initially, all my sales team, marketing team, and everybody, they all disliked it. And they said that, it's very preachy. It looks like a radio show. It's very boring. People will not come, they will not watch, we'll lose all our advertisers. So that was the first reaction. But when I started giving people news which they could relate with, there are two things. You are giving them the right news, which is our duty. Sometimes they might not like it also, but then news is news. You cannot basically make changes in that news. You can just change sometimes the tone. So the news has to be relatable. The news has to be something which is affecting your life. The news you can use in your life. So I have always believed that on every platform, I have tried to be very friendly with my viewers. I have tried to simplify very complicated news. My my whole format is of what should I say, explainers. So if you look at my show, at least 50 to 60% of the total broadcast is only about explainers. I'm explaining things, and people are liking it because all other people, they are not explaining it maybe in their own language, in their own very relatable format. So that's the whole thing. But yes, I will definitely say this: we need to earn money, we need to be very sustainable business wise, we need to give salaries, that is all right, but at the same time, we need to be very, very responsible. And I believe that being responsible, being clean, being a family oriented show or content producer, you can still be successful, you can still earn money, you can still be called a national icon or whatever.
We Yeah, yeah, sure. Short, very
Very short thing on
very short.
information integrity, which is that despite a programming and advertising code, it would be very difficult for me as a consumer to find integral information during the Indo-Pak war on television. That would not be the case online, where there is no program code and advertising code. Maybe it's thought for cause for a pause and reflection. And if there were no market entry barriers into television news, including if I want to start a news channel tomorrow with a 5 rupee deposit, if distributors were told that they have a reciprocal obligation to carry what I have to provide, as broadcasters have to provide in a obligatory manner to every distributor. Perhaps if these non-tariff barriers were not there, perhaps we would have a more democratic selection of news where I could actually find what I want to find. Today, I can't find what I want to find.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Avinash, quick
Absolutely.
closing thoughts, and then we'll go to Vivek, who will
So,
have the last word.
okay. So, frankly, the economics of broadcasting in digital era, the first thing, Sashiji, is that the government should stay out of the business. There is no role for the government to regulate the pricing, bundling, and 50 crore or 20 crore turnover, everyone, if I'm not right, you have to submit to launch a news channel, then you have to pay 60 crore carriage fee to distribute in all India and reach out to your audience. Your business model is flawed. There's no business in it, right? And hence the problem of sending those information from a curated and crafted and responsible newsroom to the public has become a casualty. So only people with a lot of money can do this, which itself is curbing the freedom of the press. While on the other hand, on the digital side where there is no regulation, people are free to say whatever that they want to do. So I think government has got a lot of work here to cleaning up the job in internet, this thing. Second thing is that the companies which are in business today, they have to invest in the content so that people can pay. And the broadcasters have to come out with a model where they can actually charge some value from the consumer, and consumer should pay for those content, so that people who are not serious in this business, they have gone to launch this business to get some builder licenses, you know that they should go out of the business rather than the people who are serious journalists. And third one is that the company had to adopt the digital technology. So what you show on television, you show on digital, and monetize both of them together. And for that, the big tech has to support. That's my closing remark. Thank you.
So, Vivek, you get the last word. Unfortunately, you missed most of the discussion, but we have one of your former colleagues here. So, give us your perspective on the economics of broadcast.
So the beautiful part about news is that none of us actually become former colleagues. We become permanent friends. So in fact, gentlemen sitting on my right, they've broadly sort of taught me the business of broadcast. So whatever I'm going to be saying is largely what I picked up from them. So Avinash was my senior in Star News, and Sudhirji has worked with me. So I circle, let's say, the business of broadcast around three C's right now. So one is the consumer, and I think Sudhirji is sitting there is amongst the best people who knows that the consumer is now in a continuum. So he gets a WhatsApp message in the morning, he gets an app notification, then he comes on to TV when he's getting ready, then there is something else, and then there is Instagram, and towards the night the family gets together, they come on to broadcast. So sooner we understand what our role in the consumer's life is, we'll be able to do better service to this. So that's a lot that I learned from Sudhirji, that you actually promote through YouTube your the show on TV,
and then you get a lot of reaction on Twitter, and then comes back to TV the next day. That I think is essential for all broadcasters to understand. Also, I mean, we have to stop monetizing compartments. I think we'll have to start monetize continuums. If the consumer is consuming a continuum, then we should go to the advertiser. And since we are a very ad dependent sort of a business, we also should start selling the continuum. Second is communities, which I've learned from Avinash, because he has been the man behind some of the biggest IPs. So whether it's Shera Bengali or I mean we do the India Today conclave, and communities give you a lot of loyalty. Right now there is so much fragmentation. It's not just between television channels. It's actually, you're competing with entertainment, you're competing with everything. I mean, everything that's a stimulus is actually competing with me, and therefore the only way you will get loyalty is through building communities who keep coming back, and there is a cause there. Third, I think, is currency, which is very important for currency to come in, because I mean, while we call ourselves linear TV, we're no longer linear. I mean, we're selling cost per reach, cost per rating point, cost per this, cost per that. There is no granularity, there is no quality, there is no sense in. I mean, you're still working on reach, frequency, impact, and these have to sort of grow. And I think, as long as we get these three right, we pretty much have our business in order.
Great. I wish we had more time from you, but I guess we couldn't make it happen today. But I'm sure people would like to converse with you off stage. With that, I think it was a great panel. Thanks, all of you, and fantastic performance, Sudhir, on your first month. Congratulations from all
Thank
of
you
us.
so much, sir. Thank you.